Now, I would like to get within the introduction, formulation, and solidification of education for sustainable development. This is the first visualization, sustainable development standing on economy, ecology, and society, the three pillars of sustainable development. Based on that, in '96, UNESCO, together with MIO and the University of Athens, organized, and UNEP, organized in Athens the Interregional Conference for Re-Orienting Environmental Education, and this is how it was presented by UNESCO at the time, and suggested to hold a very big conference in Thessaloniki 20 years after Tbilisi, the Thessaloniki 1997 conference, which brought together about 1,300 participants from 87 countries. And we discussed there in the declaration, and this is the proceedings, 862 pages book, the introduction of the term of education for environment and sustainability. This was the result of a very difficult negotiation among different educators' teams. Some of the teams suggested that environmental education is enough to support the entire structure of sustainable development, whereas others who worked for years on development education or different types of education suggested different solutions. Then we expanded, let's say, the foundation of sustainable development under the education for environment sustainability. This actually led to a very fruitful discussion for some time, until 10 years after Rio in Johannesburg, with the education reaffirmation campaign and many preparations in Bali, we had the discussion and approval by the countries of the decade for education for sustainable development, and also the Type 2 initiatives like MEDIS, Type 2 initiatives, voluntary initiatives under United Nations for different activities, among which education for sustainable development. What was the conceptual change here? The main change for which also we have contributed a lot is the non-pillar representation of sustainable development, because we have socioeconomic, we have environment economic. So instead of the three pillars of the Greek temple, we have a tetrahedron, which is the most stable structure in the world, and we have proposed initially education as the basis of this sustainable development pyramid, tetrahedron. What does it mean? It means that sustainable development has to be within this structure, and education could have helped for finding the appropriate position. However, very soon we realized that with education alone we cannot obtain sustainable development. So we changed education into governance, and this is why governance throughout the management for sustainable development, of biosphere reserves, of whatever regional or sectoral managements we need, governance is fundamental. The analysis of governance, first of all, let me turn this structure, this tetrahedron, on the environment facet. What we see is a similarity of what we had at the beginning. So we see the overstructure, the anthroposphere, on the environment, as we have said at the beginning. It is very similar. It's not identical. We have become more analytical, more sophisticated in understanding, actually, the complexity of this overstructure. And by analyzing governance, we can easily move both to the content of the education for sustainable development, but also to the tools of management. And this is very important because the tools of management become fundamental areas of understanding and of learning of education for sustainable development. These are the institutions and regulations. This, if we get it further, is linked with the global citizenship, with the proper citizenship of every person. It is also science and technology, so this links, because this enhances the carrying capacity of the natural systems, and in fact, this links education for sustainable development with the science education. And of course, we have a fundamental part, which is education itself. Education itself includes not only formal education, but non-formal and informal education, awareness, and change of culture. When say change of culture, also means strengthening the roots with the past. It's not, but in some cases, cutting some of these roots and going ahead if these things are, let's say, linked with unacceptable practices or the position, for example, of a woman in some societies and so on and so forth. So to obtain the sustainable development, we have the combination of the three initial elements: social cohesion, welfare, responsible economy, environmental protection, and the tools to obtain them, which is education, application of innovative science, and effective institutions. If I take education, the educational content, in the third type of tools, I have actually the culture, the cultural change. Now I get a little bit in the methodologies. The methodologies, as identified already in Tbilisi for education, environmental education, are still valid. It is about the knowledge part for the environment, now for sustainable development. It is in the environment, in close, let's say, contact with the reality, and this is the commitment in favor of the environment, in favor of sustainable development. At the same time, we have some principles like the learner in the center, and also an important understanding that we are talking about multi and intradisciplinary approaches. Further on, we have some approaches important for the ESD. These, again, are linked to fundamental learners' competences on which the ESD relevant educators also develop their own competences. So addressing the basic learners' competences, these are learning to learn, learning to be, learning to work with others, and learning to act. These are all very important, and in all our approaches, we come back to that. The second, let's say, important tool or characteristic of ESD is the effort to have the entire school, or further on the entire institution, learning institution, having it as a whole. The whole institute approach means that I'm not interested only on the curriculum, on the content. I'm interested in the methodologies to be followed and the culture, and also the relationship of the institutions with the entire society, but also using the institution itself as a showcase for sustainable development. Let me summarize the differences between environmental education and education for sustainable development. You may see it as a tree. In environmental education, the emphasis, always we want the tree, which is the development. But the emphasis in environmental education is caring on the environment. Let's say here the soil and water, that we water the tree. The concept was by having a healthy environment, we have a healthy tree, and then the distribution of the fruits and all the rest will go automatically to the right direction. However, we saw that this is a necessary but not able condition. So we moved from the caring of the environment in order to maintain the tree into caring for the tree itself. In order to have the tree and sustainable production of fruits, so we have, again, the attention for the environment because we need to have a healthy tree, but at the same time, at equal level, we have the attention for the tree to prune, let's say, the tree, because the fruits that are standing very high in the tree are not, collected at the right time and are lost. And therefore, this is the economy part. And we need also to make sure that our neighbor who has no tree will not come in and cut it or burn it or do something wrong with me. So I need to see how the distribution also of the fruits of the tree are integral part of the protection of the tree. And therefore, I'm talking about the social part. So here, the education for sustainable development equally refers not only to the quality of the water and soil, but also to the other two functions. So this is a very important component for ESD, the attention for the entire tree. And we have tried through UNESCO, through UNICE, through the Mediterranean bodies to have the appropriate regulatory frameworks and guidance for educators. In the Mediterranean, we have the Mediterranean strategy on ESD formally adopted in 2014 and the action plan for 2016 by Ministers of Environment, Ministers of Education. And we are moving now well equipped towards 2030, but this is going to be dealt with by another colleague. Thank you very much indeed.